Welcome back to the Awakening Potential Show. This is a space where ordinary softens and extraordinary is allowed to emerge. I'm your host, Karen Rudolf. Get my name right. And this show is for visionary leaders who carry a lot, learn a lot, and quietly know that there's so much more to life. And you are a visionary, whether you realize it or not, because you're envisioning your life. We know that there's not more to do, but there's always more to remember. So here we talk about awakening, not as a concept, rather as a lived experience through real stories, embodied wisdom, and conversations that meet life right where it is right now. And this is where sassy confidence meets classy wisdom, and bold badassy gets to be expressed without apologies. So take a deep breath, let your shoulders drop, give yourself permission to be here fully. My guest today, and I'm so excited to have her, is she shares the experience on a whole different level, which I'm so excited to get into and talk about. And her journey really reflects part of the work that we talk about. My guest, Gwenm Carsley, she is a body, sex, and soul coach. Her mission is inviting people out of a performance and into full aliveness. Love that. She has a background as a dancer, theater, film, and now after the pandemic, she started shifting into body, sex, and soul coaching. After going through her own midlife awakening, she understands just how deeply we learn to mask these sensations in sex, intimacy, and life itself. Gwenm, welcome to the Awakening Potential Show. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I always begin by, oh, I got what I call my God button. Oh, I know I'm already on the right track. So, where did life begin for you? Were you always someone who wanted to be in the theater? Or are you always somebody who was thinking of intimacy as a youngster? Or how did that emerge? But let's go back first before you get to.
As a child, I was always a very sexual being, very much in my body. My mother was a dancer and a figure skater, and very young, I was probably about 6, and I opened up what was then the Yellow Pages, if you remember the Yellow Pages, the phone book, to find the dance school after my mom talked about being a dancer, and I went to the L'École Supérieure, which is part of the Grand Canadian Ballet. So I started very young in embodiment. I loved to be in my room and dance. I was a private child. My mother, bless her, struggled with chronic depression and anxiety. So I learned how to be on my own a lot and to entertain myself a lot. And I loved life at a very young age, but already started to struggle with stuff that comes with being with a parent that has a lot of emotional things that they're carrying. So I started very young in my body. And as I grew, I realized, and it took a while to realize how dissociated though I was. I think the theater taught me how dissociated I was from my emotions in my body. So I felt all the sensations, but I cut myself off at the head. And so I started very young with healing modalities. I think I was 17 when I went to my first sound bath, for instance. I was trying to go a very alternative route to my mom, who had been on medication since she was really young. She was probably one of the first Valium babies. And so theater, dance, movement, voice, all of that really helped to heal myself, strip a lot of the masks that you build up in life. But I fell in love with, I call myself a connection junkie. I get high on connecting and the aliveness that comes from theater. And I think what people don't realize is how theater, we think of people playing roles, and we play roles in life that people are pretending, that they're lying. But truly great actors are truth tellers. In fact, they strip all of that away. So for me, all of this work that I ended up going into is because I love stripping away truth, getting to the bare bones of it. And I'm not very good at having relationships where people are just talking about the weather or very superficial things. So I learned very young to get into the body. And then
I want to ask you real quick before, just for listening audience, so they understand as well. When did theater come into it? Was that something you started really early, or
I was about 17 when I went into my first drama class. I was actually terrified of auditioning. I love rehearsal. I love being on stage, but that whole process for me, I stepped into it to build some confidence and then ended up loving it. So started it when I was around 17 and then moved to New York and went into musical theater and then went back to Canada, ended up moving into film and television, did some casting there. I've done it. I've done everything from PAing or being on the casting side of things to writing. I did my own pilot that I self-produced. So I started quite young doing these things.
I got it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your, there was a pause here. So I'm curious, for the listening audience, like somebody I know, I was so myself, and I can only speak from my own experience. I was so shy. I was so introverted that I didn't have the theater thing going at the time when I was growing up. However, I did have other things, but it wasn't until after my daughter was in high school and she had taken an improv class, and that got her out of her shell. And I thought, wow, what does that look like? And I remember having to go to South Africa for a conference. I was in the creativity community, and I ended up taking a course in improv, and I was standing there on stage going, but it wasn't until later that I just started finding that it was fun, and I was able to express myself that way and get out of my shell. How did you get out of your shell to be out there in the
Oh,
world?
still call myself an extrovert. It's not, I think, how did I get out of my shell? I found my center more as I got older. I'm going to say being 40 definitely hit around that time. I started to get much more embodied in my being. But it's been a journey to come out of my shell. Like I said, I was great on stage. I could connect on stage. I could connect with my fellow actor, but stepping out into the world was another story. So for me today, it's just about, it's sinking into the breath. It's always coming back into my belly is how I describe it. It's not about being perfect. I act silly, make mistakes all the time, but coming out of your shell, I think it looks different for everyone. And I think there's beauty in shyness. It's where shyness is hiding versus part of just being quieter or just not needing to be as loud in the world. And so the world can be very overwhelming, come at you really fast and hard. So I think shyness is a little bit of protection, and everybody has their own flavor. So I don't know. I still have shyness in me, even though people are like, you're not shy. I'm absolutely shy.
I like to call myself an extrovert as well when I'm up there on stage. When I come back, man, so I'm curious. I'm very curious, as you can tell, but my curiosity always gets the better side of me. So, would you consider when you're out there on stage, would you consider it a form of masking when you're out there because you're playing a role, but it's not necessarily your authentic self doing the speaking, or is it? I don't know.
I think it is. I used to say no, that definitely you're stepping into someone else. And you are, I think, depending on the role, but you always have to come in with your essence. That's why I was saying, to me, great actors are truth tellers because you are exposing yourself, or at least it feels that way. I think even when people think, oh, they're watching a great performance, for instance, that feels really raw and primal, something that we can relate to, it's because something is touching, something in them is touching something in you. So I don't think it's being someone else. I think you are going into the deepest parts of yourself to be able to step into another perspective and then playing with parts of the body, whether it's breath or movement, to inhabit how another body might feel. But it's got to come from a real place or we don't buy it. How many times you can see somebody cry and it doesn't affect you? Watch the soaps, right? You're like, meh, they're crying, but whatever. But you feel it when somebody is touching something. So from stage or from an actor perspective, from my perspective, I've always felt very bare on stage. That sometimes it's just terrifying because even though it's another script, it feels as though you're being seen from the inside.
Absolutely. I love that. Which really brings us to where you are today. And for me, I always say it always starts with the inside, from the inside out anyway. But before we get to today, because what you're doing could be considered for a lot of people, especially introverted people, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Perhaps, I don't want to say controversial because it's a natural way of being, but there's a lot of people that are just very intimidated my certain topics and such. And what was it that got you into doing what you did other than the pandemic, as I had said earlier? You're going through on stage, you're embodying, because it is embodiment work. Before we get to that, actually, I had a question because not a question, well, a statement, because I am a huge component proprietor of breathing. And breath work, I think, is key. And when you're up there on stage and you're breathing through it all and you're attempting to remember lines and everything else and being present to what's going on around you, which is key elements of just daily living. What is your
My magic behind breath. I've had some great breath work teachers. Breath work is presence to me. So most of us breathe in our chest. Or we stop breathing, especially in those moments that are terrifying or bring on tension. So coming back to the breath, which is connected to your voice, which is the part where we express from. And most people don't even know what their voice sounds like. Sorry, and I think I lost your question, but for me, breath is key in living, right? And we forget to do it. So when you're being on stage, remembering lines is the last of it until you lose a line, right? But your lines generally become so embodied in you, they almost come by rote, right? They just move through you. So it's in those moments, though, when we come alive and you notice it with your breath. So if you stop breathing during a performance or you are just going through the motions and something catches you off guard, where actors fear the most, oh my God, I'm going to lose my line. It's that moment of excitement when you come back into your body, into presence, that usually is something extraordinarily exciting. The audience doesn't know what's happening, but everybody wakes up at the same time. So bringing breath back into the body is crucial, which then brings me into what I do, which is getting people into their bodies, it's about breathing. It's about coming into your voice. It's about being embodied.
Love it. Tell us more about how the journey took you to what you're doing today. So for the listening audience who want to awaken their potential and what they don't know, perhaps something that you can enlighten.
So, as I said, as a child, I was always like a very sexual being or very embodied in my being. And when I was 30, I met what would be my wife. And I'd always been with men prior. It was a very new experience. And ironically, my wife was very conservative in her being. So I always said she was the straightest lesbian that you could possibly know. And so in my relationship, I was very free in my body and she was less free in her body. And so that dynamic throughout our marriage really, it took its toll on my being, in that I shut myself down. And I had gone to research sexuality. I was interested in the divine. I always have connection to God, consciousness, and so on. And so I had found a woman called Layla Martin, who's very renowned on the circuit of Tantra. And I started to follow her, and we tried to do some practices together, and in the marriage things fell apart that way, and I just started to shut down more and more, and I found myself numbing out completely through drinking. I started to just justify my life because I had a good life, I had a good wife, but I didn't feel like I was embodied in it, and my acting life was very separate from my home life. And so I started to segregate myself a lot. And so probably by my early 40s, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how to fix it. And I kept searching for that fulfillment, and I didn't know what it was. Then my wife, so somewhere, I'm going to say by 2018, I knew that I wanted to leave, or that I needed a major shift. I had met somebody that opened the tap, and it wasn't just the tap had been opening for a while. And I say the awakening tap, the part that you can't ignore. And it was so loud in my being. I just found myself turned on all the time. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Like, my skin was on fire. I was so alive. I could hardly sustain myself. I couldn't sleep, and it stressed the marriage a lot. And so at the top of 2019, I told my wife that I wanted an affair, which of course didn't go very well. But I was sucking for wind and locking myself out. And I wrote a play at that time. I wrote a book of poetry. I was creatively on fire. But by, I'm going to say May, June, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so the pressure between my awakening and her severe illness was just, it was unbearable. And so by October, November, I ended up leaving and decided I was going to do a world trip. So we had this just, I needed to go and experience the world. I had a lot of fear in my being of not living enough. And so it was COVID that opened the door to stepping into this world of body, what I call body, sex, and soul, or sexuality. But it became about connection and connecting to my body. And throughout the entire process, as you know, my wife was supposed to have lived 15 years. She didn't. She made it to 3. And it just taught me how precious life was, how we live it so unlived. I watched my mother live it unlived, right? She has so many regrets. So many people perform their lives. So many people just go through the motions because they think they're supposed to. This is the rules of life, right? And there are no rules of life. As long as you are nourishing yourself and not harming another, to me, how you want to truly live. But most people don't even know what those desires are and so yes, I talk about sexuality, which is always makes people uncomfortable, but to me it's about life force.
I love that. So, if you would share a little bit, if you would, about the life force and how the listeners might awaken it within themselves. Because, like you said, so many people I know as well are just existing and they're just being in the everyday moment to moment, what's for dinner, what's on TV. And I can't imagine that kind of life personally myself because
Yeah.
I enjoy it fully, as do you. But share a little bit about what you've created for yourself out of that.
Well, I think people have two paths. So I think people either hit a point of that fork in the road that says, I'm going to die and I'm going to let myself die and remain there, or I'm going to die and step into new life and to keep recreating new life.
Word.
Recreation constantly. And so I always invite people first into feeling. Can you feel yourself? Without going, oh, I think, or what is the story behind, but just being able to sit with your body, which is one of the most, I think, challenging things is what is your capacity? I think people, when they come to me, it's usually, oh, I want to have multiple orgasms. I want to have this experience. But the point is if you can't feel, you can't, and that goes for pleasure as well, right? If you don't let yourself go into your own depths, then you can't feel the exquisiteness of pleasure either. And so it means that you need to stay present with your body. It means that you need the capacity to stay with what is. And from there, that translates into being able to open up to life. So there's a giving and a receiving component. I talk a lot about energy, being
Yeah.
present in the moment, right? So this give and take. And it's in being able, learning how to stay, starting to listen to what your desires are without judgment, right? We have a lot of things in our head, oh, I can't do that. And how many limiting beliefs are in the way. So a lot of this work is really about removing the gunk that gets in your way and cleaning out that system, because I think most people fear living life, right? It's exciting. There's even in the calm, when you are fully present, there is an aliveness that moves through you, and it is an energy.
Absolutely. Everything is energy is in my world. That's what I am always talking about, energy, frequency, and vibration. And I find, and what I'm hearing you say in this as well is when we tap into ourselves and allow ourselves to become and be in that space, that's where the embodiment and the joy happens. So many people I've experienced through my career as doing coaching and such is also not only are they not in touch with it, they don't know how to even ask for it because they've never experienced it and not knowing what we don't know. But there's so many. I was just talking to a friend yesterday about the pain and the pleasure of life. There's always going to be pain and there's always going to be pleasure. You can't have one. It's like yin and yang. You can't have one without the other. And it's almost like to translate that, I'm looking at a cloudy day out here in Florida, and it's almost like having the clouds, but we know the sun is going to shine. And it might stink and it might suck a little being in the rain or the clouds or whatever in the moment, depending how you perceive it. But again, it's how you're going to perceive the pleasure of that sunny day. And your body feels the rays of the sun on you, and you just want to go, But we don't know. We experience that every day, right? And it might not be the sun, it might be something totally different. But when you're embodying it and you're feeling it and you're experiencing it, it's a whole different ballgame. Life becomes a whole different.
And life is complex, so it's not about feeling one or the other. Most of the time, we have multiple things running through our bodies, right? So you can have joy and pain. I think about a close friend who'd lost her daughter now many years ago, but always carrying that pain and finding the joy in life. And from my own experience, witnessing just what my wife had to go through, and I was carrying guilt, shame, all of it, right? And feeling an immense gratitude and joy for life. And so it was all coming through. And sometimes it was like really ugly. It was like putting the sheets over my head and not being able to move. It was screaming at the sky after she passed and really having rage out fights. It's the parts that we don't want to show that need to come to the surface. We're so afraid of being human, right? We're so afraid of making a mistake of, oh my God, what if I'm seen in this mess? I'm going to
Exactly.
be so ugly, right? And that, ironically, it's the parts that we crave in attachment and intimacy and bonding.
So, how do you embody the joy, even though you've gone through such grief and all of the emotions that go along with that? How do you stay grounded and learn to embody that there's more to it, the joy, the
Oh, it's generally a process depending on where you are. But for me, I'm lucky, I think, because I always feel joy, a level of joy, even in despair. But for me, it's sitting and staying with the despair and not trying to change it. Staying with the sensation as much as I possibly can. And then organically, if I need to move the energy, I like to dance in my living room. I say there's always something physical. For some people, it could be running or walking in nature, moving in your body, feeling your body, doing something that can bring you
you
back to
just went
sensation.
mute. Are you on mute?
No.
Oh, I hear you.
There we go. I
There you
was
go.
saying, I'm just coming back to sensation in your body so that you're staying with it, whether that's through dancing or even taking a shower. I remember just sitting there needing to feel the shower hitting my skin and just staying and feeling the warmth or sometimes the cold. So noticing where the dissociation is. And I think for most people, it's really hard to go in and stay with it. We get uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good when we're not feeling good, right? How do I get out of this body? How do I leave? And so being gentle with staying, for just listening to, what do you need? What do you want from me? How can I nourish you in this moment? Is parts of getting through the discomfort. I see is it my internet? There we go.
I,
Is she there? Is it my internet?
yep, you're
There we
still
go.
here with me.
I'm still okay, good.
Yes. So this has been great. So now you've gone through theater, excuse me. You've learned through your experience along with theater and voice work and breathing work to really be present in your body and to experience it on another level. And then the pandemic strikes.
A pandemic struck, and I ended up being stuck in London. So my thought was, I'm going to go travel the world. I'm going to come back. It was an agreement with my wife at the time that you'd connect in and I'd go on this journey. And literally, I was on a cruise with my family and COVID. It was January. So COVID was just coming out. And my sister said, oh, come to Europe. We'll go do things. And we went for a ski trip. We were in France and I went down. I was out cold. I went to London. It all came out and I got stuck in London and was connecting through Zoom and realizing how deeply connection was needed and started on it came to me as a download. I'm like, why am I not doing this? I love sexuality, but I love sexuality in connection with life and with embodiment and breath and voice. And so it hit me right at that point, and I just moved in. I mean, it was a perfect time to study, to work with people. It was just like this concentrated ball of time. And I went from London to LA. So again, continued my path there and was very solitary, which good lesson in loneliness and feeding yourself and knowing how to come back to yourself. There's a lot of people who really struggled in COVID. So that was my lifeline. And during that time, I had written a play. I had written a play prior to COVID, but I had started writing a book of poetry, and it all came, it was like a creative wheel of everything coming together.
Right, beautiful. So, how did you find yourself pausing and coming back to yourself? So, for the listening audience who's going and stressing and life is happening to them, what would be that thing that you would share with them to get back into their body and come back to self?
Oh, I would say breath. Take a moment to stop. As you're moving through the motions, if you have that moment of consciousness, which we call mindfulness, of taking the time to notice, how am I moving through my day? Am I just moving through it automatically? Am I tasting my food? How am I putting on my clothes? How am I interacting? Am I able to stay present with the person in front of me? How am I coming back and connecting to myself? Am I doing things for others, but where's me in the equation? So self-reflection is a great place to start. And then the embodiment portion is to just, I say, if you can come into your belly breath, take a moment to stop and come back to yourself. And then the process of being embodied is a step-by-step process in terms of where a person is on their journey, what kind of traumas they've been through, how shut down they've been throughout their life. If you're not experiencing, especially as we get older, and I talk about orgasm, but orgasm is really, again, it's energy flow. Can you stay with pleasure? Where are you shut down? How are you just going through the motions? And it's learning to stay with yourself. So take a theater class. I always think, go do something radical. But what are your dreams? And start looking at what it is that you want to be doing that you're not doing.
Absolutely. What would you consider yourself? What's your superpower?
My superpower, I think it's my joy of life, that I exude it, that it comes through me, and that I don't do bullshit. So I love connection with people. So I cut through, and I've got a really good sense of intuition. So working with people or just being in friendships, I always like to cut to the heart of things. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not really interested in how the weather is.
Exactly. I love, before the show, you and I were talking, and you're doing this whole, which I love, where you're doing this whole eat, pray, love concept of life. And that to me is living life fully, no regrets. What would be your most exciting adventure thus far?
Oh, I've had a few. I went to Morocco with my sister and she left. We went for a wedding and I had probably a week on my own in Morocco as a woman. So just traveling around by myself and having the guts to do these things. What else have I done? For somebody who's terrified of flying, I have serious fear of flying. I am on a plane very frequently. I just don't believe in stopping life. So I've done the zip lining, I've done the outward things, but really the things that I'm most proud of is the things that just doing, just the constant expression. It's the fact that I did a poetry book, that I published it, that I wrote the play, so those are things that are exciting to me. People are exciting to me.
Absolutely. For the listening audience, if you love that comment or what Gwenm is doing, drop a heart in the comments below for sure. And are you considering taking it on yourself as well? And it takes something to do that. One of the things I always ask prior to closing our show is I call them pearls of wisdom. And I like to think we shed all this light and inspire others through our journeys, through our conversations. And what is that pearl of wisdom that you really would like to impart on our listening audience? That little wisdom that will make a difference in someone's life.
Oh, this has probably been said a million times, but we only have one life that we remember at a time. And I don't know who we're performing it for, but this is the time and the place to play, to be ourselves, to express what we most want to express in the world. I believe in people shining their light, and we don't diminish our light by somebody else's light being big. I believe that each light compounds light in the world. So I'm like, go and be the person that you want to be. Go and live the life. And whatever that is, it's not about being the billionaire, the famous person. It's about being real in your life and how you want to live it. So that when you do get to the end, that there are no regrets.
Exactly. I love that. It's interesting you said earlier, my spiritual mentor shared with me many years ago, and she just reframed it again for me recently. She says, we don't have to set ourselves aflame to warm others. Don't have to be that people pleaser in order to be true to yourself. And live a life without regrets. I think that's the biggest. I just love that. Gwenm, thank you so much, Gwenm Carsley, for being here, being authentic, being real, sharing yourself and your honesty, your heart, and your willingness to share the journey with us. Your journey with us is just amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I love playing like this because your story is such a powerful reminder, not just to myself, but to the listening audience, that transformation doesn't happen all at once. It begins the moment we become aware and continues with that brave, bold, badassy choices that we make along the way. And to everyone listening, remember the bridge from ordinary to extraordinary is built with small steps of change and big leaps of faith. You're more powerful than you know. So keep showing up, keep rising, and keep awakening your potential because you're worth it. So if you heard something here that you really inspired you, all of Gwenm's contact information will be in the show notes. She has a podcast of her own. We'll link that show note in the show notes. So reach out to her, and if you heard something that was of interest, let her know. We do this because we love what we do and we love you. So if you like Bridge, DM me the word bridge, and if you have any questions, I'll be the one who answers them as well on my end. And until then, make it a badassy day for you. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you.